So till this point we have talked about OOPS concept, we have talked about the fundamentals of Python. Now let's go towards some negative stuff, which are errors. Of course, right, no one likes error. But then if you talk about this error, we have three types of errors in general. The first one is compile time error, the second one is a logical error, and the third one is a runtime error. Now what it means? Now let's say if you write a code and that code has multiple statements, and in one of the statement you have a syntax error. Let's say if you are working with if and then you forgot the colon there. If you are using print with the wrong spelling. So if you make those type of mistakes, those are syntactical errors, right? And you can call them as compile time errors because you will be getting those errors at compile time. The next set of errors is logical errors. Now what is logical? So let's say your code is working, so there's nothing wrong with the syntax, everything is working. But then when a user says, hey, I want to add two numbers, 2 plus 3. And the answer for 2 plus 3 is 5, right? But let's say if a user is getting 4. So when you say 2 plus 3, if the answer is 4, that's a logical error. So in logical error, your code gets compiled, your code also gives you the output. But the problem is it will not be a correct output, and that's logical error. The third one we have is runtime error. So in runtime error, your code gets compiled, nothing wrong with that, there is no syntactical error. Your code is not actually giving you a logical error as well. Everything is working, okay? So when a user says 2 plus 2, it is giving you 4. Sometimes, if a user might give you a wrong input. Example, let's say if you're trying to divide two numbers, 5 divided by 6, okay? So both the values are coming from a user, right? So you are trying to divide two numbers which are given by the user. If a user says 6 and 2, it works, right? It will give you 3. If a user says 10 and 5, it is 2 again. But then what if a user says 6 and 0? You cannot divide a number by 0, right? And that's where it will give you an error. Now this is not a compile time error because the code is getting compiled properly. This is not a logical error because for normal execution it works. It is not working for specific input. It is not working for, your code was working somewhere between you're getting error, and that's your runtime error because you are getting error at runtime. Now out of this, which is the most easiest error to find? The compile time, right? Because at the compile time itself, at the developer level, at the developer side itself, you're getting errors. Logical errors are again easy to handle because as a developer, we also test the application, right? Or we have a specific testing team for that. So we do test the software for different bugs. So logical errors normally comes under bugs as well. What about runtime error? Because see, runtime error, the mistake is not done by you. The mistake is done by the user, right? So if you are saying, hey user, enter two values, and in your mind you have that a user will not enter a 0 value for the second one, but user is doing that. Maybe this application is using certain file from a C drive. So it was working from last 7 days, and today morning user has deleted that file, and now if you open the application, will give you error because it is not able to find the file, right? So all these things comes under runtime error. So you might be thinking that's okay, right? That's a user issue. User is not able to handle the software properly. See, first of all, as a developer, you have to take care of all those things. You have to also understand what mistakes a user can do. Maybe not exactly a user, but maybe there might be issue with the database connection. There might be issue with the network connection. So if you're using an application which interacts with the server and maybe there's no internet, then what will happen? Your software should not get stopped. The moment you get runtime error, your execution stops, and that's an issue. Banking software, so let's say we have millions of transactions on the server and there's only one runtime error because of which your software will stop working and you will lose billions of dollars. So the important point is, even if you are getting the exception, even if you are getting the error, your execution should not stop. That's our main logic here. So let me show you in the example here. What I will do is I will try to use two variables here. I will say a is equal to 5 and b is equal to 2. And of course, if we divide these two numbers, it will work. Let's try. So I will say print a divided by b. Now in this code, if you can see, we have three statements, right? We have line number 3, which is statement 1, line number 4, which is statement 2, line number 6 is statement 3. Now out of these three statements, you can divide a statement into two parts. One is normal statement and then we have critical statement. Normal statement means which will not give you error. Example, when you say a equal to 5, there is no problem with that. When you say b equal to 2, there is no problem with that, right? Even in future, if you want to change the value from 5 to something else, it will not give you error. What's with the line number 6? So what will happen with line number 6? It will execute for this code. Let me try it. So I will right click here, I will say run. And you can see it works. You got the output, which is 2.5. And let's say after doing this, let me also print a statement which is by. So that means after printing the value, I'm printing by as well. And now if you run this code, you can see we are getting the output and then we are getting by as well. Now what if I change the value of b to 0? See, of course, we know that this is not possible. You're going to divide a number by 0. The moment you do that, you will get an error. And of course, the error, it says there was a trace back and then it was line number 6. Okay, that's right. Line number 6, we got the error. It will also print the statement which is giving you the error. And it also shows what error it is. And it is 0 division error. So this is your message. Division by 0, not possible, right? So how do we solve this? So there are two problems here. The first one is user will not understand what this error means, right? Second problem is you can see we are not getting by in the output. So in the output there's no by. That means your execution is getting stopped in between. We don't want that. So if you want to solve this problem, we have to use a special block. See, at this line of code, we are getting exception, right? We are getting error. So what you can do is, whatever block you have, you just need to put that in a try block or in a try statement. So we have a special thing called as try. So what we are saying, hey, this line of code, this is a critical statement. I'm not sure if this code will work or not. So try to execute that. Okay, so try to execute. So your Python will say, okay, since you are writing this in a try block, I will try to execute. But what if there's an error? Then you will say, oh, okay, if there's an error, it's very simple. I will accept the error, okay? I will handle it as a programmer. And the way you do that is by writing exception. So you have to say accept exception. Now it is exception, so the moment you get an error this line, this will give you the error and this is where you will handle it. Now what type of handling we want here? Again, you can do anything you want. Example, so if you know that it is because of a divided by b, you can simply say, hey, you cannot divide a number by 0. And trust me, this message is much better than the error which we are showing before, right? So now if a user is giving you the value which is 0 for the second value, you will print a message by saying, hey, you cannot divide a number by 0. You can print any message you want. In fact, you can not just print a message, you can do whatever things you need. Example, if you want to perform some operation here, you can do that. Example, if you want to multiply two numbers, you want to add two numbers, you can perform different operations here as well. We don't want that. Let's keep it simple. So in the except block, you will print the message. And now let's run this code and you can see it works. You can see we got, hey, you cannot divide a number by 0 and it's printing by as well. So this works, right? So what we are doing is we are trying to execute this statement. If this works, we'll print it. Otherwise, we will print the except block. Okay, that works. What if I change the value to 2 again? Will it print, hey, you cannot divide by 0? Okay, let's go with the flow now. So what will happen? You got the values which is 5 and 2. You're saying, hey, try to divide these two numbers. You're saying 5 divided by 2. There's no error, okay? There's no error. The moment you don't have any error, it will jump out of the block and it will continue the block first of all. It will not execute the except block because except block will execute only when you have an error. Okay, that's why you can see if I run this code, we will not be getting any error as number by 0, okay? But what if you want to print the message error as well? What if you want to print what is the error? So what you can do is, here you can say exception as E so that you can represent that exception object in some way. So this E is just a representation or the object of exception. And here I will try to print E as well just to see what is happening inside E. And I will go back to my value to 0. Let's run this code and you can see it is printing the message which we have, plus it is also printing the exception message which is division by 0. Okay, so that's how it works. That's how you can handle exception. I have one more thing to talk about. Let's say I'm not printing by here. What if I have a special thing? I'm opening a file. Example, it is always a good practice when you work with files. When you open a file, you should be closing that file. If you open a database connection, you should be closing that connection before exiting, okay? That's what we do, right? So every time you open a fridge to take out a bottle, you make sure that you close it. Now, even if you get the exception, let's say if you're opening a fridge and somebody is calling you now, you will make sure that you close the fridge, right? You don't leave the fridge open and go somewhere, right? So that means whenever you open a resource, always close it. Hold on. Let's say if I open a resource inside a try block. So let's say if I'm opening a file here, if I'm opening a database connection here, where should we close it? should I close the resource inside try? I can print a message. Again, the message is not important. What is important is we are writing to some statements so that we can close the resource. Since we don't have a resource as of now, I will simply go with print statement. So here I will say resource open. See, now this resource can be anything, okay? This can be a file, this can be a database, okay? And here I will say resource closed, okay? This works. If you have a different input like 5 and 2, this should work. You can see it says resource open, you got the output, and it says resource closed. But what if you get the exception? Now in this case, when you run this code, we have resource open, that works. It is printing the message, but can you see that we don't have resource close? What went wrong? The thing is, the moment you get the exception, at this line you are getting an exception, right? It is jumping outside the statement. It is jumping outside try, is going to except block. So that means instead of typing it here, we should be doing that inside the exception. Something like this, okay? So you should be closing the resource inside the except block. So if you run this code, it works. You can see that we are saying resource open. There was the exception, but we are saying resource close. But now, what if I change the value from 0 to 2? In this case, if you concentrate, you can see it is not saying resource close because you will not be executing the except block if you don't have the error. Oh, so we have a problem. So should I put resource close both the side in try and except as well? We don't have to, because Python provides you one more feature which is called finally. Notice finally means you can put your statements in finally. So finally simply means it doesn't matter if you are getting the exception or not, I will get execute. So if you got the exception, don't worry, I will execute myself. Even if you don't get the exception, that's fine, I will execute. So except block will be executed only when there's an error. Finally we get executed, doesn't matter if you're getting the exception or not. Beauty, right? And that's how you work with try, except, and finally. So point to remember, when you work on a statement, your statements might give you some exceptions, so try to handle them with the help of try, except, and finally. In fact, we can do one more thing here. What if I take a value from the user, and let's say we have a variable k, and the value from the user I'm taking with the help of input, and the type of input I want is of course integer, so I will say enter a number, and then to convert that into integer we will be using int function, right? And then maybe I want to print the value of k, that's it, nothing much. The moment you run this code, you can see it says resource open, and now we also got the output which is 2.5, which is waiting for a number. I will enter a number which is 6, everything works, there is no error, we got number 6 as it is because we're taking it, and then we are saying resource close. Let me change the value. Let me change the value from, let's say p. Now there's an issue, right? We are saying enter a number, then we are saying p. Oh, we got an error. It says you cannot divide a number by 0. Oh, that's weird. We're not dividing by 0. And then it says invalid literal, because this is a message which is printed by e, if you remember. The e is printing it, right? It says invalid literal for int with base 10. Oh, that's weird. What if I put that outside the try? I just want to see what type of error it throws. Because see, when you say divide by 0, it says 0 division error, remember? Here if I print this, I just want to see what errors it gives you. If I say p, and you can see the error name is value error. So for different type of errors, we have a different names as well. And the general one is exception. So exception will be on top. So even if you say 0 division error, it's a part of exception. Value error is a part of exception. So exception can handle everything. But you can be specific. What you can say, hey, I want to say you cannot divide a number by 0 when there is a 0 division error. So only when there's an error of 0 division error, you'll print this. Example, you know, when we are sick, when you're not feeling well, you will go to a particular doctor. Example, if there's something wrong with your, let's say, nose, you will go to ENT doctor. If there's something wrong with your, let's say, skin, you will go to a skin doctor. If there's something wrong with your teeth, you will go to a dentist, right? Same way, for different type of errors, we have different type of except block. So you will say except, and this time you will go for value error, and you will say again as e doesn't matter. E is just a name of the object, okay? You can have any name, doesn't matter there. And you can print invalid input, that's it, just a different message. But what if there's an error which you don't know? Example, you are trying to handle 0 division error, you're trying to handle value error. What if there's an error which you don't know about? In that case, at the end, to be on safe side, you have except, and you will say exception. Now this exception will try to handle all the other errors which are not zero division and value error. It's something like we have dentist, we have gynecologist, we have skin doctor, and then we have a general doctor who can handle everything. The same way, this exception can handle all the exceptions. And here you can print something went wrong. Yeah, that's it. You can print the message you want. And now if you run this code with a different value, of course, if I say P now, you can see, oh, we got an error. We still got an error because I forgot one thing. I'm still doing this outside try. We should be doing that inside try, if you remember. And now let's run this code. Let's say enter a value which is P. Can you see that it says invalid input? So for different type of errors, you have to use different except block. See, if you're doing this for the first time, it will take time, okay? So it takes time. So do practice with try and except. Now, if you're coming from Java background, we do have this concept in Java as well, right? As try, catch, and finally, the same thing. In this video, we'll talk about one of the most interesting concepts, at least from my side, and the concept name is threads. Now, why do we need threads? Now, first of all, what is a thread? Now, basically, if you can imagine an application, let's say if you have MS Word, that one application will have certain sub-processes, right? So in MS Word, we can type a content, we can change the font of it, we can save that in some other formats. So MS Office provides you so many features. So we can break down one task into multiple processes, and then again, we can break down those processes into a thread. So you can imagine thread as a lightweight process. So when you break down the big task into small parts, each part will be called thread. So why do we need threads? To understand this, let's go with the concept of multitasking. So what is multitasking? So let's say if you have a CPU and if you have multiple tasks, let's say you want to type something on MS Word, you want to listen to a music on VLC player, or you want to also browse the internet on Chrome. So if you want to do multiple tasks at the same time, so our system, basically any OS nowadays, any modern OS, let's say Windows or Linux-based OS or Mac, it does support multitasking, which means at one point you can run multiple applications. If you have learned OS, we have this concept, right? You cannot actually run multiple tasks at the same time. So as your CPU, it will do time sharing. So every task will get some time. And we know that, right? That's how your system works. We cannot run multiple applications at the same time. But nowadays, we have a concept of multi-core CPUs, right? We don't have one core nowadays. We have multi-core CPU. Example, the machine which I'm using now, this is a quad-core CPU. In fact, the mobile phone which I'm using now, this is octa-core CPU, right? Which means I have multiple cores available to work with. And on this multiple core, we can run multiple applications. But how? Let's think about one application. Let's say MS Word. Now, while you're working on MS Word, at the same time you're typing, at the same time there is a spell check, at the same time maybe you're trying to save the file. On the other hand, let's say if you're playing a game, in game itself, we have so many events happening at the same time, Let's say if you're driving a car, you're playing NFS, at the same time you are driving a car, and then we have opponents, then we have cops. So we have so many things happening at the same time. That means we have individual threads. So you are one thread, your enemy is one thread, the cops are one thread, and then all these threads are getting executed on different cores, right? Not on same core, maybe on the same core, but most of the time it is on different cores. So if you have octa-core CPU, you can use all the 8 cores. In fact, if the software which I'm using for exporting the videos needs a high processing power. So what happens is, if you have octa-core CPU, I can actually use all the 8 cores of my CPU. That's the advantage of using multiple threads. Now, in fact, if you can just go to your task manager, we have this option of performance, and there you can check, how many cores you have. So in this machine, I have 4 cores. And look at the threads now. So in total, we have 1,902 threads. Again, the moment I open one application, it will open more threads. The moment I close the application, it will have less threads. Example, if I open Eclipse, you can see it will have its own threads, right? The moment I open Eclipse, it will increase the number of threads which are required for that. So every application will have multiple threads. Now, how can we understand that in a programming way? So let's try to build our own threads in this code. So let me open my PyCharm. So we have a fresh look here. We don't have anything there. What I will do is, let's say if I define multiple functions, okay, just to keep it simple, what I will do is I will get 2 classes. One is hello. We have a hello class, and I don't know why, but the moment I say multithreading, this is my favorite example. And then we have hi. So we have 2 classes here. We have hello class and we have hi class. And in both the classes, we have the same code. Let's say we have a definition. So this class has a function called as run or method called as run. And in this run method, what I want to do is I want to print hello 5 times. So I will say for I in range, I will specify the range as 5, okay? And then I want to print hello 5 times, right? So I will say print hello, that's it. So it will print hello 5 times. The same thing I want in hi as well. So I will simply reuse my code. Instead of saying copy paste, we should say reuse. And here I will say hi. So we got two classes, hello and hi. In hello, we are printing hello 5 times. We are printing hi 5 times. Now, if you want to execute these two methods, logically what you do is you create objects of it, right? That's what we should be doing. We can have any name here. We'll say t1 is equal to, again, you can have any object name, doesn't matter. So I'm saying t1, and t1 is the object of hello, and t2 is the object of hi, right? Again, you can use any name. You can use obj1, obj2, or whatever you want. As of now, I'm using t1 and t2. So t1 is the object of hello, t2 is the object of hi. Now once I got the object of hello and hi, I want to call these functions or methods, right? So you will say t1.run, that's how you do it, right? And you will say t2.run. Now before running this code, just analyze what it will print. Of course, right, it will print 5 times hello, it will print 5 times hi. That's the format. Why it will print hello first, then hi? Because that's how you're calling it. So you're first calling t1.run, where t1 is the object of hello. Then you're saying t2.run, then it will call the run method of hi, right? Let's run this code, let's see what happens. So if you can see the output, we got 5 times hello and we got 5 times hi, right? This is what we were expecting. So normally what happens is, since you're calling run of hello first, it is printing hello 5 times, then you're calling run of hi, it is printing hi 5 times. And that's how the sequence goes, right? It always print hello and hi in that sequence. So let's imagine each run takes some time, okay? Of course, right, to print hello and hi takes some time, right? So let's say to print all hellos, it takes 5 seconds, and to print all highs, it takes 5 seconds, which means in total, it will take 10 seconds. And we know that it is using only one core. So even if this machine has 4-core CPU, right, it is still using one core. I want to execute the run of hello and execute the run of hi simultaneously. Is it possible? Can I execute two functions at the same time on different cores? Or maybe on the same code, but then simultaneously. Is it possible? Let's try. Now, the moment you say you want to execute them parallelly, this is what you do. By default, every execution has one thread. So even if you are not creating a thread by yourself, you do have one thread, and that thread is known as a main thread. Okay, so this execution is done by a main thread. Okay, but I don't want to work with main thread. Of course, we have that, but I want to print hello and hi, but then with the help of two different threads. How will I create two different threads? It's very easy actually. So there's one way to have features is hello has to be a subclass of thread. It's very easy, right? So if you simply make hello as subclass of thread class, your job is done. Same goes with hi. Instead of normal class, we are making them thread, because now they can run individually on different cores. Oh, but we are getting error. Now when you want to use thread, you need to import a package, right? And that package is threading. So you have to say from threading import star. So you're basically importing everything from threading package or threading module. And now you can see we got two threads. We got thread and we got thread. Now once you have made them as thread, you will simply have to run them. It's so simple. Okay, before running this, what we are expecting is, you can see the diagram here. So we have a main thread by default, right? And main thread will execute all the statements. The moment you say run and run here, it should create two different threads, which is, let's say T1 and T2. And T1 will print hello 5 times and T2 will print hi 5 times. And it should be happening simultaneously, right? So it should get the output as hello, hi, hello, hi. But let's run this code and let's see what happens. Oh, that's weird. We are getting same output. They are not running in parallel. What's wrong? See, the moment you say you want to create two different threads, this is not happening here. Even if you make your class as thread, we are not creating two different threads there. If you want to create a two different thread, instead of calling a run method, you need to call a start method. And that's weird, right? We are defining the method name as run, and then we are calling start. So behind the scene, what is happening is, when you say t1.start, internally it will call run. And the reason why we went for this method name as run is because inside thread class, we do have a method called run. So if you can see inside, I'm inside thread class now, and you can see we have a run method there. So it's an inbuilt method actually, and that's why we went for run. And if you're going for any other method, it will not work. So you have to make sure that instead of calling run, you have to say start, so that it will execute two different threads. Now let's try. So let's run this code and let's see what happens. Oh, we are still getting the same output. We are getting the same output. What is happening is, yes, these two threads are running simultaneously. Let me prove my point. What I will do is instead of printing them 5 times, to print them 500 times. Let's see what happens now. Let's run this code and you can see, oh, something happened here. If I go up, you can see that, we have so many highs. I'm going up, okay? So you can see we have alternate high and hello. So you can see we got hello, hello, hello. And then suddenly we got 3 highs and then we got hello again. And then we got highs and then we got hello. So something is happening in parallel, right? But not exactly the way we wanted. We wanted to have 1 high and then 1 hello alternate case. So that means it is happening in parallel, but then your system is so fast. This system is so fast that it is executing them at the same point, right? So there's a collision. Plus, in your system, we have a concept of schedulers, which will give you a specific time to execute. And we are expecting it will print only 1 hello in that particular time, but it is so smart, it is executing 10 times in that gap. It is printing 50 times in that gap. So to increase the gap, what I will do? Since it is going very fast, I will make it sleep. I will make it slow down. The way you do that is by importing a package. So you will use from time and you will import special method called sleep. So what you will do here is, so after printing hello, every time it prints hello, I will say, hey, sleep for, let's say, 1 second. So before printing the next execution, go for a sleep of 1 second. So now what will happen is, when hello gets printed, it will wait for 1 second, and by the time you can print high once. So it will go alternate now. Let's see what happens. Let's run this code and you can see it's going alternate way. You can see that we are getting hello high, hello high, hello high. So it's working, So both the functions or both the methods are running in parallel now. This is what we wanted, right? So that's great. It is working finally. If I scroll up, I hope everything is going good. Yeah, it's going good. So both the methods are running in parallel. So yes, we have 2 threads. Now you might be thinking why you have to put sleep there. Because normally when you create methods, normally when in big application, one method execution does take time. Okay, here we are just printing hello. That's not what we do in the industry, right? So normally we make big methods and those methods will take some time to execute. And that's why I'm putting sleep there, because I'm assuming that we will be writing some big code to do that. I will just run this code once more and let's see if it is going good. Just a recheck if everything is going good. Yeah, it's going good. Oh, something went wrong. Can you see that? Something went wrong. We are getting high hello. Now what is happening here? Now this is called as collisions. Maybe it is happening that 2 threads are coming at the same time to the CPU. Okay, so because see, we are assuming that they will run in parallel, but suddenly they are going to the CPU at the same time after sleeping. So once they wake up, they are going to CPU at the same time. What I want to do is, so when we say start, t1.start and t2.start, I want to have a gap between them two. So I will put a gap of, let's say, 0.2 seconds. So let me put a gap of 0.2 seconds so that they will not go into collision. And now you can see, since there's a gap between these two, they will not collide now, hopefully. And yeah, it's working. There's nothing wrong. Yeah, it's working. This is how you can, unsync them, because initially they were sync and that's why they were colliding, but now they will not. Perfect. Okay, this is how you do it, right? This is how you make it work. So what is happening now is the moment you say T1 and T2 object, you got 2 different threads, but still they are into main thread, okay? So they are not separating. The moment you say start, it creates a new thread, okay? So in total, we will be getting 3 threads after this. So 3 threads, the main thread, T1 thread and T2 thread. Okay, so let's say I want to print something here. I want to print by. Now, what do you think? Where you will print this by? After printing all hi and hello, it will print by. In fact, let me just reduce the number of hi, hello here. Let me just go back to 8 because at least we can see what is happening. So what do you think? Or maybe 5 is better, right? Let's go for 5. So what do you think now? Will it print by at the end after hi, hello, or maybe somewhere in between? Let's run this code. So take your time, think about it, pause the video, think about it, comment if you want. And let's run this code. Oh, can you see that we got by in between? That's weird. Before printing hi and hello, how can you print by? The problem is, who is responsible to execute this by? Is it T1 thread or T2 thread? So who is responsible here is our main thread. So after starting T1 and T2, so T1 is busy printing hello, T2 is printing hi, main is doing nothing, right? And that's why main says, hey, my job is done, let me print by. We don't want that. We want to print by at the end. So we have to ask main thread, hey main thread, wait for T1 and T2 to join. How can you ask that? So you have to say, hey main thread, let T1 join and T2 also join. So please continue only after they are joining. So when you say t1.join and t2.join, at this point you are asking your main thread, because all these statements will be executed by the main thread. So at this point main thread will say, okay, you are asking me to wait for t1, I will do that. So at this point main is waiting for t1. Now once t1 comes back, it is waiting for t2. Once t2 comes back, it will print bye. Let's verify. You got hello hi, hello hi, hello hi. At the end you will get bye. That's the power of join. So that's the basic of threads, okay? So the advantage of threads is you can use multiple cores and you can execute things simultaneously. In fact, I will try to make one more complex example next time. The concept is very important. Once you know the basics, learning advanced will be easy. In this video, we will try to focus on files. But why do we need files in the first place? Think about this. Let's say if you are working with a code, and of course when you write a code you will use certain variables, and in those variables you will be storing some data. Now most of the data which we use in variables are temporary data, right? If you want to count a variable, if you want to store some data like temporary data, you will store that in a variable. But what if you want to save a data in a persistent way? Now I mean simply for a longer period. Now of course the moment you close the application, you will lose all the data. What I want is, even if I close the application, I want my data to be stored somewhere. And that's where you need to find a permanent storage. One of the way you can do that is by using a relational database. Example, you can use MySQL, you can use Oracle, but then it also provides you a table structure, right? And those are complex stuff. What if you want to store something for a longer period but then in a simple format? And the best way to go for is text. So let's imagine we have a text file here which is my data, and inside this my data I have some data. You can see it's my name there, Telusko channel name, and it's a programming channel and all those stuff, right? So we have this data, random data, and I want to use this data in a code. So how do I open this file in a code? I know it seems difficult, right? The moment you say, hey, how can you open an external file in a code? Back of your mind, you might be thinking, oh, it will be very complex, but don't worry. As we mentioned before, Python is the easiest language, and to do all this stuff, we already have some inbuilt functions. So let's do that. So one of the function or method we can use here is known as open. So you simply say open. You have to pass two basic parameters here. The first one is the file name itself, and the file name here is my data. Okay, so you have to mention the file name. Do we have the extension for this? I don't think so. So you have to mention the file name, and you need to also mention the mode. Now what is mode here? See, whenever you work with a file, of course, there are different purposes you can use files. One of the reasons we use file is to read the file. One reason to open a file is to write something in it, or maybe to overwrite something in it. So there are different purposes, right, to open a file. In the same way, here when you open a file, you have to show your purpose. Do you want to read a file? Do you want to write a file? Now you might be thinking, why does it even matter? If I open a file, I want to do whatever I want. See, the thing is, when you work on a complex system, you might be working with multiple threads. You want to give certain permissions. And to read a file, we may achieve multi-threading, but to write a file, we have to make sure we are using only one thread or something like that. Again, that's a complex stuff, but time being, imagine whenever you open a file, it's very important for a system to know what your intentions are. Now, how do you mention your intention? It's very simple. You just need to use R here. The moment you say R, it means you are opening this file for reading. Okay, so we have done with the opening of file, but then if you want to handle that file, you will save that file somewhere. So you will say F is equal to open. So you can imagine this F is a file now. It's not actually, it's a simply object or a reference, but you can imagine, okay? So time being, you can say this is a file. Now with this file, you can do certain operations. Example, I want to print file. Let's see what happens when you print F as it is. So I'm printing F here. Let's see what it says. Let's run this demo. And you can see F is of type text IO wrapper with name my data with the mode R. So it is giving you all different features. So it is giving you everything except one thing, which is the data, of course. How do you fetch data? It's very simple actually. So this open, in fact, when you talk about files, it provides you certain methods to use. One of the methods which we can use here is read. So we can use read to fetch the data. Let's see what happens now. I'm using read and let's run this code. Oh, we got everything. So it's so simple to print a data from a file in Python. Now, what if you don't want to print the entire file? You want to print only one line, the first line. Do we have an option? So the moment you say control space, you can see, so it has certain names. We have read line, and then we have read lines. Okay, so let's use read line here. Now when you say read line, and let's see what happens when you say read line. Okay, just an experiment. So you can see when you say read, it will print everything. When you say read line, and let's run this code, you can see it only prints the first line. Oh, okay, so that means when you use read line, it will print only first line. What if I want to print the second line? So it's very simple, just copy this code. So every time you say read, it has a inbuilt pointer inside it. So when you say read line, the pointer will move to the second line now. And then when you say read line now, it will fetch the second line, the pointer will move to the third line. Let's verify. So let's run this code. You can see we are getting, my name is Navin Reddy and second line is Telusko on YouTube. Now you might be thinking why we got this space here. It's because print itself will give you a new line, and in this data as well you have new line, right? So after every line you have a new line, plus print will also give you new line. We don't want a new line after print, so we'll say end. So let's put a symbol by mentioning hash. So let's say when you use hash, it means we have done with the line 1 and line 2. Okay, so you can see this is what it does. It says hash. Okay, so we should be doing that before as well, right? So let's remove that. So yeah, so the idea is when you don't put end, it will by default just new line. So now we know how to work with read line and read. Can we mention the line number? Okay, that's a question. Let's say if I mention line number 4, and if I don't use second one, let's see what happens. Will it accept it? Oh, it is only printing 4 characters. Okay, so when you say 4, it will print only 4 characters. That's great. So you can use this function, and this is how it works. But how do we write data? So we know how to read. Now I want to know how to write the data. So in order to write the data, first of all, let me remove that. See, we cannot use R to write something. We have to use W to write something. So what I'll do is let me use another file here. We'll say F1, and let me open that file, and we have to mention the file name here as well. So I will say the file name here is ABC, and we have to mention the write command. So the moment you say W, it means you are trying to write something in a file. But hold on, if you see on left hand side, we don't have any file as ABC. Now what will happen? See, now it is smart here. So when you say open a file with a write mode, it will first check, do we have a file there? So we don't have a file, right? So it will create a file for you. Let me show you. So if I run this code, you can see we are getting a new file, which is ABC. And if I open this file, yes, it's a text format. You can see we don't have any data. Of course, we don't have a data there, right? So let's print something. And the way you can print data is by saying F1 dot, and you can use a write command. So you can say write, and here you can write something. I will say something. Okay, let's see what happens now. So let's run this code, and you can see we are not printing anything in the console. That's why we're not getting any stuff here. Let's go back to ABC, and you can see in ABC we got something. So you can write multiple data here. You can also write something. Let's say F1 dot, and you will say people. Let's run this code, and you can see in ABC we will get something and people. Of course, you can give a space in between while writing this code. Okay, so this makes sense, right? Okay, so what if I say F1 dot write? So I know that in my file we already have something and people. I want to say something people laptop. So in my file I want to also add laptop. How do I do that? So here you will simply say laptop, right? That's what we are expecting here. But the twist is, if I run this code, look at the output, look at the file. Can you see that we lost all the previous data, right? So we lost something, we lost people, we only have laptop now. It's because when you say W, it simply means write the file. What if you don't want to write a file? You want to append something. If I say, let's say here, if I say mobile, I want to append mobile after laptop. In that case, you will open a file with A. So A means append. So W is write, R is read, A is append. And now let's run this code. And if I go back to ABC, you can see we have laptop and mobile. So remember this thing, we have R, we have W, and we have A. Okay, now what I want to do is, we have two files, right? We have ABC and we have my data. What I want to do is, I want to copy everything from my data. I want to save that in ABC. That's a difficult step, right? So first read all the data from my data and then write everything in ABC. Two steps. First of all, let's understand how do you fetch everything from my data. We have seen one way, right? We can use read line, but then how many times you will say read line? How do we know when your file will get over? That will be impossible to track. So the best way is, you can actually use a for loop, and you say for data in f, right? So what it will do is it will run a loop, and on a file f, of course, it will run a loop and it will try to fetch everything one by one. So if you can see, if I print data one by one and look at the output, it will print everything. We have extra line there, right? So but time and ignore that. The important thing is it is fetching everything one by one. So we have to use the same concept when you write in ABC as well. So of course you will use a for loop here. You will say for data in f, and then every time you run this loop, you have to say f1.write, and you will write the data which is data, right? So now it will, in ABC, you will have all the data about from my data. Let's run this code, go back to ABC, and can you see that? We got all this data here. Awesome, right? So this is how you can work with files. So we can use read, we can use write, we can use append. Now, just to show you something, I have one more thing. So let me just remove this stuff from here. So we have a file which is my data, right? Now if you can see on left hand side, we have pic as well. So there's a JPG image. If I open that, you can see it's my photo here. So there's a very simple photo. What I want to do is I want to copy this file, or maybe I want to print all the data about that file. Can you print data? Of course, right? When you talk about an image, it is made up of the binary formats, right? The pixel intensity, all those values. So of course, those are numbers itself. Let me try to print the data of an image. Let's see how that looks. So I will say for I in f. I don't know if it will work or not. Let's try. Let me print I. So let's see how exactly it looks like. Let's run this code. Oh, we got an error. It says char map. Okay, so cannot decode. Oh, that's an issue. The thing is, in files, we have two different modes. One is character mode and second is binary mode. Now, when you would work with file and that file has data like characters, numbers, you can use a character format. But here, you're working with a file, right, which is an image. And when you work with image, we don't have characters inside image, right? We have numbers, we have binary format. And that's why you need to read this file in a binary format. Now, how do you mention that? It's very easy. Simply use RB. So RB means read binary. And now let's run this code. Oh, can you see that? This is my values of the image. Okay, so all these are hexacode, and that's why it is printing like this, hexa values. Yeah, so you can see we are printing all these values. But then it doesn't make any sense, right? This thing doesn't make any sense. What I will do is I will save this data in a particular file, maybe another image. How do I copy this image and make another image? It's very simple. Let's create a file. I will say file1 equal to open, and the way we have done before, but then this time I will give a different name. I will say my pic, not my data this time, my pic dot jpeg, and then we will give a mode. So any guess, of course we have to say write, but then write binary. We have to make sure that we use write binary. Instead of printing it, you will say f1.write, and you will write whatever is coming from the file 1, which is from this file. Let's run this code. There's no error. Go back to, okay, so can you see that we got my pic? Open that. Oh, we got a picture. Okay, so you can see we have two copies of my image. This is one image, this second image, right? So this is how you can work with files, with characters and binaries. In this video, we will see how do you put comments in Python. Now, first of all, why do we need comments? Now think about this. When you write a code, of course your code will have a lot of statements, right? Now sometimes you write a code for, let's say, 10 lines or maybe 15 lines, or maybe sometime it goes for, let's say, 100 lines. And you don't even write one file. So for a big project, of course, you'll be writing multiple files, maybe 10 files, 20 files. Now what happens, when you write a code for the first time and if you're writing it, everything goes well, okay? Everything is working. Maybe sometime you will get errors. But what if it works? The moment it works, you will skip it and you will go for the next one, right? After 1 week, even you will not remember what you did. So there's a very famous quote which is, when I was writing this code, only God and I knew what I am doing. And now only God knows. So that's what happens, okay? So after some time, you will not remember what you did last time and why we have written that function. Okay, not just you. So let's say if you're working in a group, okay? Or maybe if you're working on a project and after some time, someone else will be working on that project, they need to understand what you did. And that's where comments comes into picture. So what you do is, let's say if you're writing a function, so about that function you will write some statement or some comment. Example, this function is used for accounting purpose. Okay, this function is responsible to handle all the exceptions. This function is responsible to handle the login and logout part. So you have to mention the comments as well. Now it is not specific to any functions or something. You can also write comments for the classes. You can also write comments for the individual statement, right? But how will you write a comment? You cannot simply type a text there, right? Because if you write a simple text, your Python parser, your Python compiler will try to convert that thing, which whatever you have written, into a Python code. But that's not possible, right? Because you are writing a normal English. And that's why you have to ask Python parser, hey, ignore this statement. And the way you do that is by saying hash. So we use hash to give a comment in Python. But then in different languages, we have different types of comments, right? We have single line comment, we have multi-line comment. Example, in C also we have this concept, in Java also we have this concept. What about Python? In Python, basically, we only have one thing, which is single line comment. So what if you want to write 5 to 6 lines as well? You have to mention hash on every line, okay? That's the standard way. Even if you have 5 lines of statements or 5 lines of comment, always use hash. But then you might have seen that triple quotes thing, okay? So triple double quotes thing, how that works. So basically, we can use multi-line comment using triple quotes as well, okay? So we can do that, but don't do it because we don't use triple quotes as a comment, okay? Because your parser will not ignore it because it is used for special purpose. It is used for documentations. Okay, now what is documentation? So basically, in some of the videos I have shown you, so when we jump to some of the methods, when you click on that method, it will show the documentation, right? So same way you can create documentation for yourself as well. So when you write a project, if you want someone else to look at your documentation, you can do that. You can create a doc string sort of stuff. You can export that doc in HTML format. You can export that doc in text format, which will be very helpful for other developers. Right? So if you want to create documentation, then only use triple quotes. Don't just write comments in triple quotes by default. So if you know that you are creating documentation, then only use triple quotes. Otherwise, use that hash for single line comment. Even if you have 5 lines of comment, use hash. Is Python compiled or interpreted language? To save you a few minutes, the answer is straightforward, which is both. So Python is compiled as well as interpreted language. But hold on, when you read some books or when you see some articles on internet, they refer Python as an interpreted language. Why so? And why I'm saying it is both? Let's find out in this video. So first, let's find out what is a compiler, or when do you say a language is a compiled language? Now think about these programming languages, right? We have so many programming languages, like we have C, we have C++, Python, Java. Now, when it comes to C and C++, they are compiled languages, right? Because you as a programmer, you write a C program, right? You write a C code. Now these are high-level languages, which simply means your machine cannot understand these languages because by default computer works only on machine language, which is binary format basically. So that means when you write a code which is in C language, you have to convert that code into a machine language, and that's where compiler comes into picture. So your C code gets compiled to give you the machine code. Now same goes for other languages as well. So that's why we say it's a compiled language. Now compiler don't just have a way of converting a higher level language into a machine language. Sometimes you also convert a language from A to B. Now A can be any language and B can be any language, provided there's a way to convert that. So a compiler can convert any language from any language. So you cannot simply say from high to low. It can be from high to high as well. That's the basic term which we use, compiler. Right? Now basically when you work with Python, we have a different way of working. The moment you work with Python file, it first gets compiled. You heard me right. It first gets compiled to give you a bytecode, okay? And that bytecode will be interpreted in a machine language. And who does that? It's the special virtual machine. But hold on, why so complex process? So what exactly this interpreted means? So basically interpreted languages simply means you have a set of instructions and your interpreter will read each and every line one by one. So line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5, and then it will start executing everything line by line, and that's why it is called interpreted language. So now what happens is your bytecode is interpreted, but then why we have to make it so complex of having compilation first and then going for interpretation? For one reason. We use a concept of bytecode to achieve portability, right? Now, what is portability here? So we have this term, right, which is platform independence, that you can write code once and you can run on different platforms. Example, as your machine changes, your CPU architecture also changes, right? So if you're writing a code for one machine and if you're compiling it to get a binary file or a native code, it may not work on some other machines because machine may have a different CPU architecture. And to solve this problem, we have a concept of virtual machine. Now in this virtual machine, what you run is a bytecode, okay? And this bytecode will run on that virtual machine and that will convert into native code. That simply means any machine, or doesn't matter matter what your CPU architecture using. So if your machine has a VM software or the virtual machine software, you're good to go. The moment I say virtual machine, are you thinking about VMware or something? Not exactly. We are not trying to copy a physical hardware. So this virtual machine which I'm talking about is very specific to the languages. Example, for Python, we have PVM. The same concept is there in Java as well, which is JVM. So we have virtual machine in Java, which is JVM, and for Python, we use PVM. Of course, right, on JVM, we can run other languages as well, like Scala, Groovy, Kotlin. But on PVM, we can run Python codes. So basically, you write a Python code which gets compiled, which is the bytecode, and that bytecode will be interpreted on your PVM to give you the actual output. Then the question arises, when you were running Python, you never did that, because if you are coming from Java background by any chance, in Java we have this concept, right? So first you have to compile the code by writing Java C, and then you have to run the file using Java command. In Python, we don't do that, right? We simply say Python and then we mention the file name. We are not doing compilation, right? And that's the beauty of Python. Python says, hey programmer, you don't have to worry about compilation. I will take care of that. You simply say Python and the file name. I will compile it, I will give you bytecode, and then that bytecode will run on your PVM. Okay, what about interactive shell? So normally when we use REPL, so we directly comment to the commands, right? We simply say print hello. Is it creating bytecode as well? Yes. So behind the scene, whatever you do on Python, it creates a bytecode first, and that bytecode gets run on PVM. So PVM is very important in terms of, let's say, if you want to do performance tuning later, if you want to understand how exactly everything is working behind the scene. So there's one more thing which we have to address here, and which is C Python. Oh, that's weird, right? What is this C Python? What if I say whatever we have learned in the Python series, everything was about C Python, right? But we have never mentioned that, because normally we always talk about Python language, right? We never talk about the implementation. What if I say Python is just a language, set of rules and conventions? The actual implementation which we are using here is C Python, okay? So whatever we have learned is actually C Python. We have some other implementation as well for Python. So you can imagine Python as a concept, and then we have other implementations. Example, if you want to eat any dish, let's say if you want to eat dosa, so we have a concept in mind, right? So this is how dosa looks like. But then if you go to different restaurants, they have a different way of serving it. We have different versions of dosa available. In the same way, for Python is a language, and then we have different implementation. We have C Python, we have PyPy, and then we also have IronPython, and then we have Jython. So basically, when you talk about C Python, it is implemented in C language. So the internal working is happening with C language. On the other hand, when you say Jython, which is Java, somewhere with Java, right? So the implementation is done using Java language. And then we have the .NET version of it, which is IronPython, which is the .NET implementation of it. So there is one language and we have different implementation. So in general, the widely used implementation is C Python. But I would also suggest you to have a look on this other stuff as well. So just to give you a summary, whatever we have discussed till now, what is Python? It's both. It's a compiled and interpreted language, okay? So even if you are not compiling it, behind the scene it's happening. So behind the scene, it is getting compiled. In this video, we will write a code to search an element from a list. So let's say if you have a list here and we have values, let's say 5, 8, 4, 6, 9, 2, and if you want to search for a particular value, and let's say you are searching for 9. Now how do we do that? So we do have certain functions in Python using which you can do that, but what if you want to do it by yourself? You want to do it manually using a loop. The general idea is, if you want to search for an element, there are two scenarios here. The first scenario is the element which you're searching for is there in the list. The second scenario is the element which you're searching for is not there in the list. Let's go with the best scenario here. You're searching for 9 and 9 is there in the list, right? Now how do we check? So we have to run a loop and you will check for each element. So let's say if you're searching for 9, you will compare 9 with the first element of the list, which is 5 in this case. Since it is not matching, you will go for the next element. We'll compare that. If this is not matching, you will go for the next element. That's what you do. And you will do this till you find the element, right? Which is 9 itself, which is the 5th element in the array with an index value 4, of course, or the least. So let's do it. So the element which you're searching for is 9, right? So you want to search 9 from this list. In fact, let me just, instead of having the name as array, let me just list. So we have a list and then we are searching for 9, right? Now you can use function here. You can say if search. So let's say search is a function which we are implementing. And in this search, you will pass two things. So you will pass a list and you will also pass a value which you're searching for. If the value exists, you will simply print found. else you will print not found. So basically, if you are getting the value, you will print found or you will say not found, right? Now, what is this search function? Is it inbuilt function? Of course not. You can see we are getting error there. So we have to define this function by ourselves. And how do we define a function? It's very easy. You simply say def, and the function name is search. And in this search, you have to pass two values. You will pass a list and you will also pass the n value, which is n. You can change the variable name as we know. We can have any variable name. Now, once you say you have this search function, what you'll be doing here? Now, first of all, we have to use a loop, right? We have to iterate from the first element to the last element. Now, we can use a while loop here. We can use a for loop here. We have multiple options, right? Let's start with while. Now, in a while loop, you also need a counter, right? You can count the number of elements. And the way you can use a counter by saying I. Normally, we can use any variable name, but I makes sense when you have a counter for the loop, right? So we are saying I is equal to 0. And the next thing we need is, let's use a loop here. So we will say while. And we have to go till where? So you have to go to the last value. So how do you know the last value? So you will simply say length of list. Now if you can observe, I'm using less, okay? I'm not using less than equal to. The reason is, this is a list, right? Index value will start with 0. So let's keep it length of list. And then you will simply check for each value. So you're going from the first element to the last element, right? You're using a loop here. So you will check if the value in the list, you will use a counter I, is equal to n. Okay, so the moment you find the value, you will stop it, right? So if it is equal to n, you can use, how do we say that we have found it? So we can simply return true. So we can simply return true the moment you find it, and that's it. At the end, you will return false. So what we're trying to do here is, the moment you find the value, you will simply return true, otherwise you will return false. That's it. That's the code we have written here. Now, will it work? So what exactly we are doing is, we are comparing with each value. If this is matching with the list, or the value which you're searching for is in the list, it will simply return true, otherwise after the loop ends, it will return false, right? That's what we are doing. Let's verify if this is working. Let's right click and say run demo, and we have not got any output, but why? Is it because I'm using semicolon? Let's remove that. Let's print something here. Let's print. It is not even going inside the list. You know why? Because we are not incrementing the while loop. We missed that. We have to say I is equal to I plus 1, right? So we are not changing for the value for the I. Just keep comparing with 5. We do not do that. So let's increment. So we have done that. Let's run this code. And you can see it says found and found here. So let's remove this found here from here. And now let's verify again. Is it working? So yes, you can see it says found. So the value is there, right? The value is there in the list. What if I give a new value? What if I'm searching for 10? And you can see we don't have 10 in the list. And the moment you run this code, you can see it says not found. So we got the code. So what we are doing is, we are comparing the value with each value. The moment you find the value, you will simply return true. Otherwise, at the end, if it is not returning, it will simply return false, right? This is where it's happening. But we still have one problem here. You can see I'm simply printing that we have found the value, but we are not saying where it is, right? We have to also maintain the position. And we are not doing that. So what I will do here is, I will say, let me take a variable which is pause. And by default, the value for pause will be -1, because normal index will start with 0. When I say -1, that means we have not got the value. So we can actually debug it. But time, let's keep it -1. And here, the moment you find the value, let me also reserve that position of I. Okay, so whatever value of I is, I will save that in pause. But there is one issue. Now, if you have seen my video on global variable and local variables, this POS is a global variable, right? And this POS here inside the function becomes a local variable. And whenever you change a local variable, it will not impact the global variable, right? Because I want to use that position outside the function. So I want to use it here. So I will say found at, and I want to print the position as well. The problem is, when I change the pause value here, it is changing the local variable, not the global variable. In order to access the global variable, if you remember, we simply use a globals as a function, and then we can give this POS as the, because we can have multiple global variables, right? We have to mention which global variable I'm talking about. So that's POS in this case. Now it seems good. I will simply run this code, and you can see it says, it says not found because we are searching for 10. Let's go back to 9 and let's run this code. And you can see it says found at 4. So the index value for 9 is 4. So you can see it is 0. It's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 9th is our 4th, right? Normally, as humans, we start the value from 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So we can also do pause plus 1, because actually in human way, 9 is at position 5, right? So let's do a plus 1 there. And you can see it says found at 5. So that's how you do a linear search. It's so easy, right? Now, when I say linear search, that means we also have other techniques, right? One of the best way to search this one is binary search. In fact, we also have binary search. Binary search is faster than linear search in some ways. but then it has something which you have to mention. So in the next video we'll talk about that, but in this video we have to do some more changes. Now don't you think for loop is better than while loop? Why to use while loop here? We can use a for loop as well, right? In fact, that will be your assignment. So what I want you to do is convert this code into for loop. There will be only 1 or 2 changes. You have to do this change because instead of using a while loop you have to use a for loop, and in for loop we don't do increment. So this is the only change you have. So do that, and you can comment your answers in the comment section, or you can also share the Dropbox link if it is working, or GitHub link. So that's it everyone. That's how you do linear search, because we are searching for each and every element from start. In the last video, we have worked on linear search, right? So we were having a list, and out of that list, we want to search for a particular element. So if the element is there, it will say found at, and it will also show the location, right, or the position of it. If the element is not there, it will simply print not found. So linear search is good, right? But then what if you have a list of, let's say, 1,000 values, and the value which you're searching for is on, let's say, after 800 values. So you're wasting so much of time. So as your list length increases, it will increase the time as well. So do we have a better way? And yes, we have one more search technique, which is a binary search. How that works? So before continuing with binary search, you have to understand in binary search, all the values have to be sorted, okay? So normally when you work with linear search, it's not compulsory to have the values sorted. We can have values in any order. But in case of binary search, you have to make sure that your values are sorted. That means if I provide initial values, example, we are putting values like this, right? So we will change it. We will have a value which is sorted, right? So let's say 4, 7, 8, 12, 45, 99. So let's say we have this value. So we have 6 values. I want to search for a particular value. So instead of going for a linear search here, we will going for binary search. Now how that works? So let's imagine we have a list here, right? And if you want to search for an element, what you will do is you will first specify the lower bound and the upper bound, okay? So as you can see, the first value is a lower bound here. So the first value itself is a lower bound, and the last value is the upper bound. You can say first or last, but then let's go with this word L or U. So L is the first index and U is the last index. Once you have assigned this thing, the next step you have to do is you have to find a mid index. Now how do you find a mid index? As name suggests, mid, it should be a midpoint of this lower and upper, right? So you will simply say lower plus upper divided by 2, you will get mid value. Now whenever you say mid value, so in this case you can see we got the mid value there, right? So the element, let's say, okay, so before going ahead, let me find element. Let's specify the element. I want to search 45. Okay, so if you want to search 45, so you can see we got the mid value, right? So what's the mid value? So the index value for 4 is 0, the index value for 99 is 5, so 0 plus 5 is 5, and 5 divided by 2 is 2, right? So we are doing integer division here, right? We are not doing float division, so we are doing int division. So it will give you 2. So the value at index value 2, so basically your mid is 2 now. So the value at that index is 8, right? So now we got 8 as the mid value. The next step is you have to check the mid value which you have got is matching with the element which you're searching for. The element we are searching for is 45, right? So it's not matching. Now the next step would be you have to change your lower bound or upper bound. For the next iteration, you have to change your lower bound or upper bound. Now which one to change? For this, you have to check the value you are searching for is smaller or bigger than the mid value. If the value is smaller, change your upper bound. That means you will simply say the mid value is the new upper bound. If your value is greater than the mid value, so the mid value here is 8, right? And the value which you're searching for is 45. So now you have to change your lower bound. So what you will do is, so the old lower bound now, it will shift to the mid value. So your M becomes L. Right? So instead of having a big list, now you got a small list, right? So the list starts with 8 and it ends at 99. Now you got a new lower and the upper value. So what you will do, you will again find a mid value. So that's what you have to do every time. So your lower plus upper. So what is your lower? Lower is basically 2 and your upper is 5. 2 plus 5 is 7. 7 divided by 2 is 3, right? So now 12 becomes your new mid value. Is it matching? Again, the same thing, it's not matching, right? We are searching for 45. Now you have to change your lower value again because 45 is bigger than 12. So you will shift your lower value to 12 now. So your 12 is the lower value and 99 is the upper value. So what you will do now is you will simply say mid again. The lower value is 3, the upper value is 5, so mid becomes 4, and at 4 we have 45, right? So now you will check. and you got the value. Now you might be thinking, oh, is it a good way of doing that? And the answer is yes, because in the initial level, you are skipping some values. You're not checking all the values. If your list is big, it will skip a lot of values which you're not checking, okay? So it will improve the speed as well. The only thing is the values which you are taking should be sorted. Let's implement this with the code now. So what we are going to do is, let's keep the same code. We have the list of values here. Let's search for 45. And so we are saying search list. We are passing the list, we are passing n, but we have to change something, right? We have to change the logic here. So let me just remove the entire stuff. This is something which will change, right? Now the first thing is you have to mention the lower bound, upper bound, right? So you will say L is equal to 0. So you will always start L with 0. And you will say U, which is the upper bound. So L is lower bound, U is upper bound. Upper bound will be the length of the array, right? So you will say length of the list minus 1, because it should be 1 less than this stuff. Now once you got the lower and upper, let's apply a loop. This time again I will go with a while loop. Now till what point you have to reach there? So you have to stop at 2 scenarios. One, the moment you found the value, and second, your lower bound should not be greater than upper bound. Okay, if that happens, you have to stop it. So your lower bound should be always less than or equal to the upper bound. Okay, it should be less than or equal to. Okay, it should not be greater than or equal to. And then you have to also stop at the moment you find the value, right? So let's do that later. So in this while, you have to find the mid value now, right? So once we got lower, once we got upper, every time you have to find the mid value. So you will take mid is equal to, how do you find mid? It's lower plus upper by 2, right? So you will say lower plus upper, and you have to say divided by 2. So you will keep this in bracket. Now you want an integer division, right? You don't want a normal division. So you will use double slash, which we have done before. Double slash will give you integer division, and you got mid value. Now you will check if the mid value, so mid index. So we have to find the value for the mid index, right? And the way you do that is by saying list of mid. If this is matching with the value which you're searching for, which is n, our job is done, right? You will simply print found. In fact, I also want to mention the position, right? So you will say pause is equal to mid, because that's the position you were looking for. Oh, but pause becomes a local variable, right? So let's make it global variable here. We are saving that position as well. And then we have to do one more thing. We simply have to say break, right? That's very important. Or we can simply return true. Why I'm using semicolon everywhere? That's it. Once you got the value, you will simply return true. Otherwise, what if the value is not there? So you will go for else. If the value is not matching, in else you have to do some extra stuff, which is you have to say if. Now we have to change your lower bound, upper bound, right? Because if you remember, if your mid value is not matching with the value which you're searching for, you have to change your lower bound or the upper bound. Which one to change? Depend upon the value is greater than the mid value or smaller than the mid value. So you will check. List of mid is smaller. If it is smaller than the mid value, you have to change your upper bound, right? So you will say if that is smaller than the value which you're searching for, which is n, change the lower bound, and in the other case you have to change the upper bound. Now let's see if that works. I feel something is wrong, but let's verify. So what I will do is I will simply run this code. It works. You can see that it says found at 5. Is it right? 4, 7, 8, 12 and 5, 45. That's great, right? And let me just do it for some other value now. Let's say maybe 7. And you can see if you're searching for 7, it will still work. You can see it says 2. And if you have a bigger list as well, let me just add some more values to here. So it doesn't matter how big value you're searching for. And let me search for 10987. Now, if the moment you search for this, or on this, you can see it says at 9 position. Is it right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's great. So this is how you do a binary search. So just to repeat, just to reiterate, what we are doing here is, so we got the lower bound, we got the upper bound, and then you are finding the mid value. So mid value is basically the addition of lower bound, upper bound divided by 2. Okay. Now once you got the mid value, you have to compare that mid value with the value which you're searching for. If it is matching, that's great. So if it is not matching, in that scenario, you will again find a new mid value. But before finding a new mid value, you have to change your lower bound or the upper bound. So because you have to reduce the size of the array or the list, right? So depend upon it belongs to right hand side or left hand side, you will change it. So that's how it works. But then we have not done for something which is not there. Example, if I search for 10, and you can see we don't have 10. It should print not found, right? It is not printing anything. So at the end here, you have to return false, because ultimately you're working with true and false. And don't use semicolon, because I work on the languages which use semicolon there. Let's ignore that. Oh, it's still not working. It still not says not found. Is it we have to do +1? So for the lower bound, you have to shift to the mid +1. For the upper bound, because see, if mid is not available, then why you have to even check for mid now, right? Mid is done. So you have to say L is equal to mid +1, but for upper bound, you have to say -1, because you have to skip that mid value, right? I guess that's the issue. Let's run this code. Oh, you can see it says not found. That's great. So we got the output. This is how you do one-way search, okay? Now in this video, we will try to sort a list using a sorting technique which is bubble sort. There are different sorting techniques available, but bubble sort works well and is easiest one available. So what we'll do is we'll take some values here just to understand how bubble sort works in theory. So let's take some values. We have 5, 3, 8, 6, 7 and 2. Okay. Now we'll sort these values. There are a lot of sorting techniques available, right? Almost in every sorting technique we have one thing in common, which is swapping. So basically you swap elements, right? And that's how you will make sure that all the values are sorted. So swapping is one of the important concepts. So make sure that you know the concept of swapping. So what we normally do is we take a third variable here. So example, if you have A and B and if you want to swap them, you will take a third variable, let's say T, and you will keep the value of A in T, then you will copy the value from B to A, and then you will copy the value from T to B. That's how you swap two values. And we'll be doing that in this video as well. Let's start with the swapping itself. So what we'll do is we'll compare the first two values. In this case, it is 5 and 3, right? Now you have to make sure that the smallest one comes first. So you will compare if the first value is greater than the second value, swap. In this case, it is greater, right? So 5 is greater than 3. So what you will do, you will swap it. So now after swapping, the values are 3, 5, 8, 6, 7, 2. Right? And now what you will do is, now you will iterate, now you will go forward. So we have to make sure that if the first value is greater than second value, then swap, otherwise skip, right? In this case, it is smaller, right? We don't have to swap now. Now what you will do is you will iterate. At this point, you will compare 8 and 6, right? Now in this case, 8 is greater than 6, right? Now you have to swap as usual, right? Now after swapping, you will get 6 and 8, right? So the final value you will get is 3, 5, 6, 8, 7, 2. Okay, that's great. Now you have to do the same thing till the end. So let's make it quick. So now you will compare 8 and 7, right? Again, we know 8 is greater than 7, so you will swap. The new value you will get is 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2, right? And the last comparison, we have 8 and 2, and of course we know we have to swap. So at the end, you will get 3, 5, 6, 7, 2, 8. Now after this iteration, after doing all these things, we have got one thing, which is 8 at the end. So after first iteration, okay, so after doing all these things, you got the biggest value at the end. But then the remaining values are not sorted, right? And now we have to reiterate the same thing. So I have to do the same thing again. And that's how bubble sort works. So it's all about comparing and swapping. Now you will start again. Now you will say again, you will compare the first two values, which is 3 and 5. 3 is smaller, don't have to swap. Then you will compare 5 and 6, no need to swap. Then you will compare 6 and 7, no need to swap. Then you will compare 7 and 2. Oh, we have to swap here. Then it becomes 2 and 7, right? So the final values are 3, 5, 6, 2, 7, 8. There's one thing which is important. For the second iteration, we are not checking for 8, right? Because 8 is done. So the maximum value you have is at the end, right? And after second iteration, the second last value is the second big element. If you can compare the list now, 7 and 8, those are the maximum values. So after second iteration, you got two big values in ascending order. Right? That means after all the iterations, so number of elements we have here is 6, right? So after fifth iteration, you will get all the values sorted, right? If you repeat the same step. That's what bubble sort is, and that's why we require two loops. One for the iteration, which will make sure that you will get the biggest element at the end, and the second loop, which is the outer loop, will be for do the same thing repeatedly. And that's what you have to do in this code. So let's get started with the code here. So it's quite simple. What you will do is you will take a list. Okay, so let me take a number list and let's assign the same values we had. Now once you got this value, you will simply say, hey, I want to sort these elements. Now the amazing thing is we do have inbuilt sorting techniques, right? But then we'll not be using that. We'll be implementing ourselves. So let's say I'm saying, hey, sort this nums here. Now after sorting, you will simply print the values, right? So you will say print the nums. Will it work? Of course not, right? We have not defined it. So normally you can define this sort method in some other module, or you can do that here itself. Let's do it here. So you will say def, you will define the sort function name as sort itself, which takes a list from you. Let's take num itself, and here you will do the actual magic. See, at the end, it's all about swapping, right? So you have to take two loops. So we'll take a loop here. So you will say for, and you will use I. Normally we can use any variable name, but then I makes sense for the outer loop. Let's say for I in. Now, the first question is, how many times you have to do this? And the second question is, in which way we have to do this? Maybe you can do it in descending order, you can do it ascending order. What we'll do is we'll go in a range, so we'll use a range here, but then from when the range will start. I want to start the length of the nums, right? So you will say length of the nums. The idea is your index number starts with 0, right? So we'll say -1. And then we have to reach till 0. So if we are going from, let's say, if the length is 6, we are going from 5 to 0. And since we are going in negative order, so we'll say -1. So iteration would be -1 here. That's how we use range, right? So basically we are going from 5 to 1. Now once you got the outer loop, now it's time to go for the inner loop. So we'll say for j in. Now we have a different range here. So for the first iteration, if you remember, we have to go till n, right? We have to start with 0 and we have to reach till 5. In the next iteration, we have to go from 0 to 4. In the next iteration, we have to go from 0 to 3. After every internal iteration, you will get the maximum value at the end. Then second last value will be the second biggest value. Third last value will be the third biggest value. And that's why the range will go till I, not 5. It will go till I. So depending upon the value of I, if it is 5, it will be 5. If it is 4, then it will be 4. Because after every iteration we are getting one value fixed, and that's it. This is your loops. Now we just have to decide one thing. Should we swap the values, or there's no need to swap the values? That's it. That's how a bubble sort works. So we'll simply check. If nums of j is greater than nums of j plus 1, then we have to swap, right? That's what we did in theory, right? So if the first value is greater than second value, swap. How do we swap it here? It's very simple. You simply use a temp variable. Temp is equal to nums of j. And then you will say nums of j is equal to nums of j plus 1. And you will say nums of j plus 1 is equal to temp. That's it. That's what you do. We have to make sure that you use two loops, one for the external, one for the internal, right? So the internal loop, it will do the swapping. The outer loop is just to check the number of elements you have, right? So if you have to do multiple iteration, not 1, not 2, it's dependent upon the number of elements you have. For 6 values, we have to do at least 5 big iterations, so that after every iteration you will get one value at the end fixed. So you have to take the decision you have to swap or not. And once we have done that, you will simply save this and let's run this code. Will it work? You can see we got 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, that's great. We got all the values sorted, right? And that's the beauty of bubble sort. It is one of the easiest one available. In fact, we do have some other sorting techniques as well, which you will see in the later videos. In the last video, we have talked about a sorting technique, which is bubble sort, right? In this video, we'll talk about selection. But what's wrong with bubble sort? The problem is, in every iteration, first of all, we do multiple iterations, right? Because we have to make sure that you get assorted values and at one point you swap two values. The thing is, in each iteration, you do multiple swapping, right? If you remember, we have done multiple swapping. So there's nothing wrong in traversing from start to end, but swapping consumes a lot of processing power. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to consume our CPU power and memory to do that. So swapping should be done only once, and that's where selection sort comes into picture. So in selection, what we do is we go from start to end and we find either min value or max value depending upon different implementation. In this example, we'll go for the min value. So what you will do, you will go from start to end and you will find the min value. So in each iteration, you will do only one thing, which is you will find the min value. So let's take this value. So we have 5, 3, 8, 6, 7, 2, the same values which we have taken for bubble sort. So what you will do is you will go from start to end and you will find the min value. And we all know how to find a min value from a list. So let's say you will assume that the min value is the first value. So you will say, hey, min is first. But then you will start comparing the first value with each element. So you will say, hey, my min value is 5, but then let me compare 5 with the next value, which is 3 in this case. And now you know 3 is the min value. So you will say, hey, the new min value is 3. Now you will compare 3 with the next value, and then the next value, the next value. And at the end, you will verify, hey, now 2 is the min value. So at the end of first iteration, you got the min value, which is 2. And now we know 2 is the min value. So what you will do is you will swap 5 with 2, right? Because we started with 5. So now you will swap 2 with 5 and your 2 goes at the first. Now you know after first iteration that 2 is the min value and it is fixed. So what we are doing is we are creating two different arrays here. One is sorted array, second is unsorted array. So the 2 becomes a sorted array. Now from the remaining elements, what you will do, again you will do the same thing. You will find the min value. So you will start from the first value and you will go to the end value and you will say, hey, now 3 is the min value. So after going from start to end, you got 3 as a min value. And if you can see, in each iteration we are doing swapping only once. So what you will do, you will swap the values with 3 becomes your second value. And now 2 and 3 becomes part of the sorted array. and the remaining value become part of unsorted array. After some time you will do the same thing, right? With each iteration you will start skipping the values, right? After first iteration we skip 2, after next iteration you skip 3, and then you will now skip the next min value, which is 5 in this case. And the list goes on. At the end you will get a sorted array, right? So let's try to implement that in this example. We already have a code here. You can see we have a sorting method, and then we have a list of values, and then we are saying sort, and then we are printing it. This is what we have done in bubble sort, right? The code which we are saying here is a bubble sort. What changes in selection is the logic, right? So you will change this part. The list of elements is same. The sort method will be having the same name. We can have a different name, of course, but let's keep it simple. And now here, let's write the actual logic. Now, of course, when you say you want to go for the multiple iteration, you need two loops, right? Nested loops. So you will say for I in range. Now, what type of range I want to define? So you can go with min value, you can go with max value. Now, when you go for max value, you go from the highest value to the lowest value. So the highest index to lowest index. In this case, we will find the min value. So you will go from the low index to the high index. Low will be 0 and the high index would be 5. So you will simply say range of 5, right? You want to reach till 4. Now, once you got that, you also need a variable which will hold the min position. So I will simply use min pos, which will hold the min position. And by default, I would say that is I. When your I starts with 0, I will simply say, hey, min position is 0. When your I starts with 1, your min position becomes 1, and so on. So normally what we do is we say min position is 0, right? But we'll not do in this case is because after every iteration, we are fixing the sorted array, right? And in that, the 0 index is gone. So we cannot simply reuse it. And that's why I'm changing the min position to I every time after every iteration. So let's use another loop here, nested loop, right? So we have to say for j in. Now the range of j, okay, so after every iteration, you can see we are creating that sorted array, right? So we have to reduce the size of our unsorted array, and that's why the range of this will be lowered. So we'll say range. It will start from I, right? And we have to go till, let's say, 6. Because the size is 6, it will go till 5, the inner loop. Okay. The only thing we have to do here is we have to find the min value. How do we do that? So we have defined the min value as I, right? So in this case, if you look at these values, so the value of I would be 0. So min value will be 0, min position is 0. And the value at 0 is 5. So we are assuming that the lowest value is 5. And then you will start comparing 5 with each value, which is with 3, with 8, and so on. The moment you find the min value, you will simply change the min value. You will simply change the min position. So you will check if nums of j is less than nums of min pos, because by default min pos is minimum as per our knowledge. But then the moment you find a value which is lesser than the min pos, you will simply change the min position, right? And so in this case, if you find it, you will simply say min pos is equal to j. So you got a new position. That's it what you do. So you can see after completing the iteration, you only got a min position. And at the end, you will simply swap. That's what we are doing from a long time, right? How do we swap? So you take a temporary variable and you say nums of I, nums of min position. So you can see what we are doing here is we are taking a temporary variable and then we are swapping the index value I, because if you can see, we are going from start to end, and we have to make sure that after every iteration you are getting one fixed value. So you will not simply keep swapping the elements every time in the j loop. You will do that in the outer loop. So you will swap only once, and that's why we are taking I index here, not j. So you are swapping the index I with the min position, and at the end you will get this sorted array. I will simply say run this demo. Oh, it works. You can see that we got 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So values are getting sorted. But I want to know how it looks like after every iteration. Okay, so after every iteration, after swapping, how it looks like. So I will simply print the nums just to see how it looks. So let me just run this code. And this is how it looks like. So initially you will see we got 2 as the min value and 3 was there as it is. And all the elements are at the same place. So we are swapping 2 and 5. Can you see that? We got 2 and 5 swapped. Now 2 is the min value, that's why. And 5 because the initial value of I was 0. And then we are swapping. You can see the next iteration is 3 as it is because 3 was there where it's supposed to be. In the next iteration, we are swapping 5 and 8. Now, why 8? Because it was third iteration. And in the third iteration, your I value would be 2. And so index for 2 was 8. And you're swapping 8 with 5. That's what we are doing here. That's why we are saying nums of I. And the list goes on. You can see we got all the values sorted. So this is the advantage of using selection sort because you're not doing swapping multiple times. In this video, we will try to connect Python with a database. To be specific, RDBMS. Now it can be anything, it can be Postgres, it can be MySQL, depending upon your choice. In this video, we will try to connect with MySQL. Now first of all, why do we need an external database? Because till this point we were happy, right? We were working with variables, we were working with collections, let's say list. Everything works, right? But the thing is, the moment you work with variables, the moment you work with list, all those things are temporary. Example, the moment you run the application, it will be having a lot of data. Example, let's say if you insert some data, all those things will be temporary. What you want to make them permanent. But let's say if you are working with the application, you have entered some data, and the moment you close them, you will lose all your data. What if you want to save it for a longer time? Example, let's say if you're playing a game, and if you want to save the game, how will you do that? That's why we need external database. It can be a normal file as well, like txt, or it can be RDBMS. Now, if you want to work with RDBMS, of course, we need to install them, maybe MySQL or Postgres. So in this video, we'll try to work with MySQL. So let's install that first. So what you will do, you will go to Google, and then you will search for a MySQL installer. So you can simply type MySQL installer. Now this installer will install everything for you. If you need a workbench, if you need a connector, and if you need a setup as well, it will do everything for you. So just search for that, and when you click on download MySQL installer, you can see we have multiple options here, and the 32-bit version itself has 2 versions in it, so you can simply download that. And you can click on this one. So install the second one, because the first one is for web community. We want the entire server software. So download this one. This is around 313 MB, and you can simply download them and you can install it. So once you have downloaded the copy, it's time to install it. So double click on MySQL installer. So accept the agreement, click on next, and now which one to install? So you can go for server only mode. You can go for client only mode if you have another server with you. At this point, we will go for developer default, which will give you enough tool to work with. Let's go with that, click on next, and here it will ask you what you want to install. So I guess it needs some requirement. It has 2 things required, one not installed. So what I will do is I will simply skip it. I don't want anything else here, so you can skip it. It is not required. Click on yes, and you can see it will install all this software the moment you say next, execute. So click on execute, it will install all the softwares. So it took around 2 minutes to do that. So let's click on next, and once you have done that, now you can see everything is installed. Now you have to do the configuration. This step is quite important because this is where you will set up your port number, your username and password. So let's click on next. So we do want a standalone machine, so let's do that. Select the first one, click on next. Now here we have to mention the port number. Now by default, the port number for MySQL is 3306. You can change it, you can make it 0708 as you want. Let's keep it by default, the thing which is 06, and click on next. Okay, we'll go for a legacy authentication and click on next. Now this is where you have to insert your username and password. Okay, by default the username is root. This is where you have to insert your password. So I will for this example, I will keep my password as 1234. That's what I'm inserting now, 1234. Once we have done with that, and we know that this is a weak password, you should always keep a strong password, recommended. And you can add extra users as well. So by default, you will get 1 user, which is root, and the password. So you can add more users. Example, I will add username I want is Naveen, and here I want the password to be same as 1234. So you can create as many users as you want. I will select only 1 is here. Click on next. You can change the service name. Let me just keep it by default and click on next, nothing specific, and execute. Now this should work most of the time. It does give you error. Maybe if you have some software installed already with that port number, then this will not work. Or if you already have a MySQL setup in your machine, then this will not work because the port is already busy there, right? So click on execute. I hope it will work this time in my machine. So you can see it is done. Now click on finish. I guess we are done. Now we have to do one more configuration for router. We don't have to change anything here because we want everything to be default. And click on next. Okay, so now this is where you have to connect with your server. And let's insert the password, which is 1234. I hope it will work. Verify. Okay, you can see it says all connections succeeded. That's what we want. Let's also verify the username Naveen. I hope that will also work. Click on check, and you can see it works. If you insert a wrong password, it will fail, of course. So you have to make sure that you insert right password. Check once again. Everything is working. Click on next and execute. It will make sure that your MySQL is ready to work with, and click on finish. We are done. Click on next. Now the moment you say finish now, it will open your MySQL workbench. It will also open MySQL shell. Now this workbench basically, so if you want to work with MySQL, you have two choices. You can work with shell where you have to insert all the commands. But if you want something like GUI where you can right click and you can do stuff, that's where we have MySQL Workbench. Now, the only reason why people don't prefer Workbench is because maybe it will slow down your machine. Maybe they want more geek environment. So you can use shell there. But I'm a big fan of Workbench, so I will use that. The moment I click on finish, you can see we got shell. This is where you can execute all your MySQL stuff. So we want to focus on MySQL Workbench. So I will just make it full screen, and you can see on the left hand side we have local instances. So click on that. It will ask you for the password, and the password we know is 1234. Click on OK, and this will open the world of MySQL Workbench for you. And you can see on the left hand side we have navigator where you can start the instance, you can stop the instance, you can see your performance in the window, and then we have schemas. Okay, so by default we do have 3 to 4 schemas available here. In fact, behind the scene we have more schemas, but this is what you can see now. This is where you can type your query. Example, if you want to create a database, if you want to show databases, you can do that here. So I will simply say show databases. And if I execute this, you can see we have, so these are the database available in your MySQL Workbench, in fact your MySQL. And if you want to create one database, you can do that. So let me just do that quickly. So let me create a database here. So I will say create database, Telusko. So you can see it has created database. So you just have to type the query and click on this cursor button here. And then I want to use a database, so I will say use Telusko. That's the database name we have. And once you are using that database, I hope I've clicked it. Okay, done. Now, once you have done that, you can create a table for you. So let me get a table. So I will say create table student. And in this student table, I want name of a student. So I will say varchar. And I also want to create from which college you belong. Let me mention college name. Let's keep it at 20 as well. So let's execute this command as well. And you can see it works. There's no error till now. So we got database, we got a table as well. Let's insert some data here. So I will say insert into student. Okay, the idea is we are not here to learn SQL, right? So I'm assuming that you know SQL. So let's insert some data. I will say the data here is, we can go with any data. Let me say Naveen. And the college name is VSIT. So I've done my post-graduation from Vidyalanka. So let me just do that. Let's go with one more student here. I will say Priya. And Priya is from, let's say, BVIT. So we got these two colleges, right? And then we just have to execute them. And yes, we can insert multiple rows at the same time. So you can see it is working. And to verify, of course, we know what to do, right? So we can simply say select star from student. I hope this will work. Yes, and you can see we got the output. I know it's very small font. I will just try to edit that in a post-production. Let's do that. So this is working. This is how you create a database using MySQL. But we don't want to work with MySQL Workbench, right? We are developers. We want to fetch data from a software. Using Python, of course. So of course, we need to connect this to a Python code. How will I do that? That we'll see in the next video. So in the next video, we'll try to write a code using which you can connect with MySQL. In the last video, we have seen how to install MySQL. And with that, we also got Workbench. And then we were able to create a database, we were able to create table, and then we were inserted some data. And then at the end, we have also seen how to fetch them, with the help, of course, with the help of select statement. The ultimate goal was to connect Python with database, right? But we have only done with MySQL part as of now. Now, even before connecting MySQL with Python, you need one thing in between, which is MySQL connector. The thing is, if you want to connect MySQL with any language, you need a connector in between. It doesn't matter which language you're talking about. We need a connector. Now, how do you install them? How do you install that connector? So what you will do is you will install that connector with Python. And the way you do that is by opening a CMD. And then we have to use package installer. Of course, we have done that before, which is pip. So if you remember pip, so type pip3, and we have to give a command which is install. And now we have to mention the name of it, which is MySQL connector. And then you just have to simply say enter. If pip3 is not working on your machine, so you will find a video in the description area which will help you to make your pip3 work. So I hope it will be done soon. So as you can see, our MySQL connector is done. Now it's time to actually work with Python. Now we can use Sublime editor here. So we can use any editor we want. So in the earlier series, we have talked about PyCharm, but then we can also use Sublime. In fact, some people have this debate in the comment section that PyCharm is heavy. We want a lightweight IDE. So we can use Sublime as well. Sublime is not exactly an IDE, but then it's an amazing editor. And you can run your Python code here itself. So you can simply type a Python code. As we can see, we can type hello, and then if you want to run it, of course, we need to save this. So I will say So to save this file, and now if you run this code, it's very easy actually. You just need to go to tools, and here you have to say build system. I will say Python. So select Python here and simply say Control B. The moment you say Control B, it will ask for the language. Of course, it's Python, we know. Simply click on enter and you can see it says hello. So yes, you can run the code here itself. So that works. Now once we have Sublime ready with us, now let's start with the actual connection. So how do you connect this? So step 1, you have to import the connector which we have downloaded before. So simply say import and mention mysql.connector. So first step done. So once we have imported it, now let's go for the actual connection. So steps are very simple. You will simply say mydb, you can have any variable, it doesn't matter. So the method name is actually connect. So we have to use a method which is connect. So this connect method will give you the database connection. But of course we have to pass some parameters. You have to pass username, you have to pass the password, and you have to also mention database name, which is optional at this point. We can specify this too. And then we also need to mention the IP address. As we know, MySQL can be installed on some other server. So of course you have to mention the IP of it as well. So let's mention them. So I will say host, and the host is localhost in this case. The next parameter we have to mention is username. So we can use root or we can use Naveen. Let me use Naveen here. The next thing we have to mention is password, but then for password we have to use passwd, and we have to say 1234. And then we have to, okay, the next is optional. So let's mention host, username and password. Now this will work. The thing is, this connect method belongs to mysql.connector. So we have to mention that as well. So we have to say mysql.connector.connect. Now this should work. Now let's verify if we are getting some error. Let me just give a wrong password initially. So I will say 5, and we know a wrong password. Say Control B, and you can see we got something. We got a big text here. Let's see what that text is. And this text says, okay, where is the error? Do you see that it says access denied for user Naveen at localhost? So why access denied? Maybe the wrong password. Let me just go back to the right password. So I will run this code once again, and you can see we got something, but not the actual output, right? It says finished. That means the code is working. Now if you are wondering how to run this, it's Control B. Okay, so Control B is the shortcut to run this. Okay, now once you have done the connection, now let's go with next step. So let's write a code to fetch all the database name in our machine. How do we do that? So basically we can use mydb dot. So there is a method called as cursor. So you will say cursor. So this method cursor will actually give you the cursor to work with your code. So you can imagine cursors as pointers, they will point to the particular location. So when you say cursor, now using this cursor, you have a connection with database, and you can execute statement if you want, you can fetch data, you can insert data. So let's do that. Initially we are fetching database name, right? All the databases. So let's do that. So I will say my cursor. And if you want to execute any statement, any SQL statement, you will simply use execute method. And in this, you can just simply write a SQL query. So if you want to see all databases we have, which is show databases, and that's it. But the problem is if you say show databases, it will fetch all database name and it will store in the cursor itself. So example, if I run this code, you can see nothing is happening because the data is stored inside cursor. So you can imagine cursor has a box as well. It's an object basically. So this object has some methods and some variables. So in those variables, we got your data. But I want to fetch them, right? So you can use a loop here. So you can say for I in my cursor. So my cursor will give you the list. You can print it. And let me print I here. I hope this will work. Let me just run this code. And you can see it is printing a lot of data for you. So as you can see, we got all the database name. So as you can see, we already have Telusko here. That's great. Once you know how to show databases, now let's go for the next step. So the next step is we want to fetch the actual data. If you remember, we have created a table called student. In that we had 2 records, Naveen and Priya. We want to fetch them. So if you want to fetch them, you need to fire a query which is select star, right? We have to say select star from the table name. We can do that here. So instead of saying show databases, I have to mention select star from student. So the student table belongs to Telusko database, right? And nowhere in the code we have mentioned that. So when you want to fire the actual queries, you have to pass one more parameter, which is database name. So I will say database is equal to, and we have to mention database name, which is Telusko. So yes, if you want to specify table name, specify database name as well. Now once you do that, you can simply use the same command to execute, because select star from student will give you that record, right? Naveen, VSIT, and then Priya, BVIT. Now let's run this code, and you can see that we got data. We got Naveen, we got Priya. That's great. It's so simple, right? You can execute whatever statement you want. In fact, instead of using cursor, we can also save the data somewhere. So let me just say result equal to, we can fetch fetch data from cursor. So you will say cursor dot, there is a method called as fetch all. So instead of directly using cursor, we can use the result as well. It will work the same way, but then you're storing your data somewhere. So what we're doing, we are fetching data from cursor, we are putting that in a result, and from result we are fetching the data. This is working, that's great. But then we have one more issue. What if you want to fetch only one, the first record? So you can also use fetch one. Let's run this and you can see it will fetch only one. Now why it is throwing new line? Because we are using for loop, right? You can simply print the result, it will print that in one line. So this works. So you can use fetch all, you can use fetch one. In fact, we can also use insert statement. We can also use delete, alter, everything. Now, if you want to be a Python programmer, of course you have to work on project. Now, most of the time we work in a team, right? Of course, you can make a solo project, but then if you want to make a big project, you'll be having multiple members. Let's say we have 3 members working on one project. Now, we have different options. You can divide the project in 3 different modules and you can work on each module. Or maybe you'll be having one module where multiple people can contribute. Now, what do you think? How will you share code? Now, one of the best way to share this 2 different code, let's say you are working on a project and then 2 other members are working on a project. Of course, you have to share your files, right? Of course, you have to merge it somewhere on one machine. How will you do that? One way, we use Gmail, right? So we share our codes on mails. Otherwise, we can use Dropbox. So you can, we can get a folder and everyone will put those codes in one particular folder. That's how we can share. But then that's not an efficient way, right? If you want to share your code, so the first thing is you want to share your code, you want to merge it. The second thing you need is you also want to maintain the versions, and that can be done with the help of Git. In fact, there are other options as well. And if you want to know more about Git, you can check the description area. There's a link. That's a video about Git. Now the question is, if you are working on Python and if you are using PyCharm, how can you use Git? Specifically, we are talking about GitHub repository here. There are different repositories available like GitLab or Bitbucket, but here let's talk about GitHub. So the main idea is, how can you push your project, or how can you work with PyCharm and GitHub together? Example, let's say if you want to pull the project from GitHub, maybe someone else code, and if you want to push your project on GitHub, how will you do that? That we'll see in this video. So let's move to the laptop. So let's get started. Now, if you want to work with PyCharm and GitHub, of course you need an account on GitHub, right? We don't have that. So step 1 would be create an account on GitHub. It's not that difficult. Enter your username, enter your email ID and password, and you're done. Luckily, I do have my account, so I will click on sign in here. So my username here is Telusko training and the password is something. I will click on sign in here and you can see this is how GitHub looks like. Of course, if you have worked on before, you know what I'm talking about. Now, if you want to work with GitHub, the first thing you need is a repository. Now, why do we need a repository? So let's head back to our PyCharm. That's where you will be doing this, right? Now, if you open PyCharm, this is the window which you will see, right? It will ask you to create a new project, or it will say check out from version control. Of course, right? Git is one of the version control we have. Now, if you click on this, you have certain options. Of course, we are using Git here, and GitHub is one of the repository you can use. There are other repositories as well. We have GitLab, we have Bitbucket, you can use them. Now, when you talk about GitHub, you need a repository here using which you can push your project and pull it. So you can imagine a repository as a folder where you can put all your files. That's what we do in online storage, right? Example, we have Dropbox, we have Google Drive. So what we do, we create a folder there and we put all our files. So let's create a new repository. Of course, I do have a lot of repositories here. I can use them. Let me just create a new one. The moment I say new, it will ask you for the repository name. I will say this is just a demo by Git because that's a repository name we have. We can go with any name, doesn't matter. But since we are doing a demo for Python and Git, let's do that. Also ask you for the description. It's always a good idea to put a description which makes sense. Now it will give you 2 options. You can go for the private one or you can go for public one. Now public one is free. You don't have to pay for it. The moment you say private, of course you have to enter your credit card details and then they will charge you for this. Let's go with public, and here I will click on create repository, and that's it. This is the step you have to follow. You got your repository. Now you can access this repository using command line as well. You can see they have given some commands here, provided you have Git installed in your machine. So I do have Git on this machine. If you don't have Git installed, I would recommend you to do that. So in fact, in the description area, you will find a playlist for GitHub or Git. You can refer that, and there are some steps for installation. Otherwise, you can just go to Google here and you can search for Git. It's very easy. Now once you got this repository, by default, your repository will be empty. You can create a new file here, that's your choice. I will simply create a new file. Now this can be any file, okay? You can have a text file, you can have a Python file, you can have a Java file, doesn't matter. In this case, I will create Python file. I will name this as demo.py. You can have any name, doesn't matter as mentioned. And here you can type your code. So I will simply say, of course you will not be running this code here. I will simply say print hello, that's it, nothing much. You can zoom in a bit. So you can see it says print hello, that's it, nothing much. Now once you have done this, once you have entered your code, the next thing you will do is you will save it. Because if you don't save it, it will not be stored, of course, right? That's how thing works. But here you have to use a different command, which is commit. So when you say you are saving something, you have to say commit here. And you have to mention some comment. So you can do that here. Otherwise it will say create demo py. Let's do that. So let's say commit new file, and you can see we got our file here. In this file, if I open this, you can see we got print hello. But then of course you will not be making your project on GitHub, right? You will not be writing your code here. So of course, to write a code, we need to use a IDE. In this case, we are using PyCharm. So the question is, how will you pull this project in your PyCharm? It's very easy actually. You can simply say clone or download. You can click on download zip. It will give you a zip version. You can unzip it and you can open that project on your PyCharm. That's one way. Otherwise, what you can do, open PyCharm and say check out from version control, say git here. Now this is where you will enter the URL. The URL, this URL I'm talking about. So copy this URL, go back and paste. Now I'm not using git for the first time in PyCharm. I have done that before. If you are doing this for the first time, you will get a login to GitHub option here, or you may get it. So click on test, or if you get an option, just click on login and enter your username password. It will accept it. Simply say clone. Now based on the repository, it will create a project for you. First of all, it will create a directory in your PyCharm projects. Click on yes, I want a folder. And you can see on the left hand side, we got our project. You can see we have this project here. Now if I expand this project, you can see we have demo.py, and this is the exact code which we have done there, right? Print hello. Now, of course, you want to make some changes, right? That's why we are doing this. When you work on a project, you will be adding a lot of features. Now, of course, in a project, you will be having a lot of people. You're not the only one. So let's say we have 5 people working on a team, or maybe 3 people. And of course, everyone will have their own task. So you have divided the project into 3 different tasks. They are working on it, and you are working on demo.py, or maybe 2 people are working on the same file. You can do your work. So I will say print, and I'm typing my own code. So I'm Telusko here. So we have 2 people. One is Telusko and one is Naveen. So Telusko is working on this machine. This is the first machine we are working with. So we are saying welcome to Telusko. Now whatever I am doing now, it is happening in my machine. Okay, so I can run it, I can test it, everything should work. In this case, it says, do you want to add the following file to Git, which is the idea vcs.xml. We don't want this file to be stored on the repository. Let's say no. I just want this one file. Right click and say run demo. You can see you can type the code, you can run this on your machine, but this code is available only on your machine. And we are not even maintaining the version control now. So if you want to achieve that version control system, you need to say commit every time. So every time you say commit, you can maintain the versions. But how do we say commit? Simply saving this file will not be making sure that it is committed. In that case, if you want to commit it, just right click from here and say git. You have to say commit directory. The moment you say commit, it will ask you for the message. Okay, so let's enter some message. I will say one line added. Now your message should be logical because some other people can also see your code, and your code should make sense by reading the comments. So that's one thing you have to remember. Now, this is the older version and this is the new version which you have done now. So in the older version, we only had hello. In the new version, we have 2 lines. Now this is the earlier commit version, okay? This is the ID for the earlier commit. You can actually refer this from the website. So if you can go to the website, you can see the commit which we have done. This was the ID, which is A319. And this is the same ID. So you can see we have A319F3 something. So this is the same ID which we have, which you can see here. This is the earlier commit. The moment you say commit, now this will not be stored on the remote server, okay? Basically, when you work with Git, we have 2 things. We have local repository and we have a remote repository. Every time you say commit, it will save that in a local repository, okay? Which means if I go back to the GitHub website and let's go back there, let's see the file. If I refresh, you can see we only have 1 line here. So that means whatever changes you have done in your PyCharm is not been reflected on the GitHub website or your remote repository. If you want to reflect it here, we need to do one more thing. So I click here, say git, and you have to say repository. You can see we have an option of push. So you have to push this project on the remote repository. So click on this and simply click on push. Now, if you're doing this for the first time and if you have not logged into your GitHub repository, then it will give you a prompt. You have to enter your username and password. Since I have done that before, it is not asking. So let's go back to the website. So it says push successful. Let's do that. Let's open this, and you can see we have 2 lines. So it is so easy to have a communication between a GitHub repository and a PyCharm. So in the initial state, you are pulling the project from the website and then you are pushing it to the website, or you can say remote repository. It's always a good idea to keep your project here. Now you will say, what's the advantage? Let's say tomorrow I'm changing my machine. Okay, so let's say I'm working on this machine now. Tomorrow I'm going to, let's say, different city, and then I got a new laptop. And that, of course, we don't have my project. I can simply pull the project from GitHub repository, and at the end I can simply push it. I don't even have to use any online storage. I don't have to use pen drive or other stuff. That's one of the use. Okay, we have some other advantage as well. Now you'll be saying, what are the advantage? Let's say we have 2 people working on this and both want to contribute to the same repository. So in this case, we are working with 2 machines. One, the current machine which you are saying it is of Telusko. The other machine which we are going to see in the next video will be Navin Reddy's laptop. And now Navin Reddy want to contribute to this project. How will you do that? That's where Git comes into picture. You don't have to use Gmail to share your files. You don't have to use pen drive to share your files. In the last video, we have seen how can we use PyCharm and GitHub together. That means how can you push your project on GitHub, or how can you pull a project from GitHub. In this video, we will see how can we use 2 different PyCharms, and if you have 2 different developers working on the same project, how can you merge it. So let's say example, you are working on a project, and if your friend want to help in your project, or maybe you have a member of 3 people and they want to contribute. So of course, someone has to get a main repository, right? So let's say you are making the main repository and they will contribute. So of course, they will be having their own repositories, they will be having their own copies, and every time they make a change, they will push the project on your repository. How to do that? And that we'll see in this video. So let's move to the laptop. So let's see how can you share your code. Now you can see we have 2 different PyCharm here. One is Telusko's PyCharm and one is Navin's PyCharm, right? We have 2 different stuff. So as you can see, we have 2 different PyCharms and then we have 2 different GitHub accounts. So one is controlled by Telusko Training and one is controlled by Navin Reddy. This project is been created by Telusko Training. So what Navin Reddy want to do is Navin Reddy want to contribute. The code which we have done with Telusko Training is hello and welcome to Telusko. If you can see on the remote repository as well, we only have 2 lines. Now Navin want to contribute here. Navin want to add 1 more line. Is it possible? And that too from different machine on different GitHub account. So the steps are very simple. So in fact, Navin can also use the same GitHub account to make it work. Otherwise, what we can do is we can go here. So let's go back to the GitHub of Navin Reddy. In fact, we are not yet signed in. So let's click on sign in here. So the username is Navin Reddy 20 and the password is some. So we are done with the login and it says, okay, so now it is showing all the repositories here. I want to search for the repository of Telusko Training. So let's do that. So in fact, Telusko Training can share the link if Telusko Training want, or Navin Reddy can simply search for it. So you can see we got Telusko Training repository here, and Telusko Training has a lot of repositories. Let me just check it out. This is the current one which Telusko Training is working on. Okay, now the thing is you can clone this project and you can do some experiment. If you want to provide some inputs, you can actually click on fork. It will create a different branch for you. So we got a separate branch. Now you can see Navin Reddy is copying this project from Telusko Training. I just love this animation. Now here, your project, so the copied project also has 2 lines. We want more lines. We want to have our own content here. How will you do that? So first of all, you will pull this project, the project which you are working on, because we are 2 different branches. So you can do anything you want. It will not affect the original Telusko Training repository. Let's go back to PyCharm. I want to pull that project. And you can see we have 2 different themes for PyCharm. The Telusko Training is using the white color PyCharm, and then Navin Reddy is using the black theme. So let me just check it out. So we'll say git, and here I will mention the URL. So let's go back here, and so you will get the URL from here. So copy it. Now this is not the Telusko Training URL, okay? So mind that. Now you can see we are getting option of login to GitHub. Now in fact, you need one more thing. You need a Git in your machine. I'm not sure if this machine has a Git installed by default. So let me just log in to GitHub first from here. Click on login, and Oh, that's done. So GitHub is done. Now test the connection just to be on safe side. Oh, it says, oh, can you see that? It says cannot run git. So file not found git.exe. So let me just do that quickly. So I will just to show you the steps. So I will say git download. So we are using Windows here. Let's do that. Now it will get downloaded soon. So as you can see, we have downloaded the Git software. Just click on this. It's very easy to install actually. So simply click on next, 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 next. It says will use. Okay, let's keep it default. Let's keep everything default as of now. Okay, so you can see it is done and we don't want to see the nodes and nothing. Click on finish. And if I go back to PyCharm, it may not work again because we have just installed Git. So let me just reopen PyCharm. So let's do the steps once again. I will click on Git. I have a repository. Let me just paste it here. Now this time when I say test, it should work because we already have a Git in the machine. Now click on clone. The moment you say click on clone, it will create a project for you. Yes, I want a directory for this. And this is our PyCharm. So it is opened and I don't know, the black theme, it's good for programmers, but I'm not sure about the video. But then just to give you a gist, if I open this demo.py, you can see we have our code here. Oh, okay. We don't have a Python interpreter in this machine, but that's fine. We are not going to run this project here. Okay. So we have these 2 lines. Now I know the font is a bit smaller, but I don't want to change the font as of now. The important thing is, what if Naveen want to add some more lines? I would say, hello from Naveen. This is the text I want to add. Okay. So Naveen is adding some more lines. Maybe Naveen is also adding some more files. Now this thing need to be there on the server as well. I mean, I want to push this project. So let's say Naveen has 5 to 6 modules. I want to push this thing to Telusko training. Can we do that? So here are the steps. Now, first of all, whatever you're doing is happening in this machine. You have to save this in a Git, local Git. To do that, you will simply say right click, go to Git and say commit. That's the first step to do. You can add any commit message you want. It should be good actually, but then as of now it works. Click on commit. The moment you say commit, it is stored in the local repository. We can have any demo ID here. Sell and commit, and you can see we don't want this VCS file there. You can see the local commit has been done. Now once you have done with the local commit, you have to push this to the remote repository. For doing that, you have to say git again and you have to say repository. And this time you have to say push. Click on push and that's it, done. So this code will be pushed on the remote repository of Naveen Reddy. And as I mentioned before, it may ask you for the username and password. Let's do that quickly. So I guess it will ask you for this for the first time when you're doing this. Okay, you can see it says pushed, right? Let's go back to the website just to verify here. And if I open this file now, it should be having 3 lines. Oh, that's great. So you can see we got hello, we got welcome to Telusko, and we also got hello from Naveen. Now this is the repository of Naveen Reddy. Okay, if you can see, we have a repository of Naveen Reddy. That's how I'm logged in. If I go back to Telusko and if I see this is the Telusko account here, and if I refresh this page, it is still 2 lines only, right? Because whatever you have done, whatever we have pushed is there only on Naveen Reddy. How will Telusko will receive these changes? Now, whenever Naveen Reddy want to contribute, what Naveen Reddy will do is, of course, it will go to the repository again, this repository, and Naveen Reddy will create a pull request. So you can see we have an option of new pull request. So we have to say new pull request. Now this request will go to Telusko training. Can you see that? It says base fork is Telusko training. It will send the pull request there. Okay. With some changes, it will remove the line and it will add a new line. Is it? Maybe that's one change we have done here. Let's see what happens. Now I will simply say create a pull request and that's done. It will ask you for the message as well. Let's keep the default message and create a pull request. That's it. The request has been sent to Naveen Reddy. Let's verify. So I'm switching back to Telusko training now. And Telusko training, if I refresh this, you can see it says one pull request. Click on this one. Now this request has been sent by Naveen Reddy. Okay, so we can have multiple contributors, not just one. Maybe Kiran can contribute, maybe Praveen can contribute, maybe Rakesh can contribute. We can have multiple contributors. Okay, now just click on this. I think we have to say merge pull request. Now, of course, first of all, you have to verify what the other party is sending to you. And after that, if you feel everything is good, simply click on confirm merge. Sometime the conflict may happen. You have to solve the conflict as well. At this point, we have not got any conflict. We are lucky here. And that's it. I guess the merge has been done. Can you see that it says merged? And if I go back to my Naveen Reddy, it also says merged. Okay, so the moment you say merged from Telusko training, it will say merged here as well. Go back to Telusko training. And here you can see it says merged. In this, if I see the code now, it should say 3 lines. hopefully. But that's great. You can see we got 3 lines here. But then if I go back to PyCharm of Telusko training, we still have 2 lines only. Okay, what's wrong here? So if you want to have this one updated, of course, right, this is not updated here. If you want to keep this updated, right click on your project, say git. Now this time, instead of saying push, you have to say pull. So whenever you copy data from the server, you have to say pull. Whenever you want to send it to a server, you have to say push. Here you will say pull and click on pull. I hope it will work. It worked. Can you see that we got 3 lines? So it is so easy to work on a GitHub. So if you have multiple people working on the same project, this is how you should work. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comment section if you have any more questions, and also let me know if you are enjoying this series. So that's it, everyone. Bye bye.